Okay, welcome, Jana. Thank you so much for being here for this session. We're going to be talking about healing physical pain and reclaiming vitality.
Thank you so much for having me, Bernadette.
So I feel like you're kind of like a new friend, which is kind of exciting as an adult to meet a new friend.
Good.
Vibe on a lot of topics and a lot of experiences. And so I'm grateful to the person who put us in touch. And to have you here to share with my precious community. I have to bring in people who can offer some really valuable lived embodied life experience and then professional capacity to team with that in areas I don't cover all areas. So this whole thing about healing our bodies and physical pain is affecting millions of people, and you have walked the path and healed physical pain and have helped many others do the same. So can we maybe talk about how you came to this work? And you can describe that in whatever way you want. It's a very interesting journey that you've been on.
For sure. Thank you. So I grew up, I'm here in Canada right now, grew up in a small agricultural community where you knew everyone, you helped everyone. There was just that deep rooted community spirit. You know, the doctor made house calls, you know, the priest would come and bless your house after Christmas. Like it was just, that's, you know, almost like a fairy tale storybook childhood, really. And the eldest of three children, I loved being involved, you know, involved in sports. I loved school. I like just all the things I really, really enjoyed. And as I always thought it was because I was first born and I had, you know, a little bit more of that A-type personality, that I would get digestive pain every once in a while. And as I went through high school, it got worse and worse, and moved away from home to go to university. And my pain actually, which was every so often, all of a sudden became basically every day. And my pain was like right behind my belly button, maybe a little bit higher than that. And we'll come back to this later because of the layers of learning that I've, you know, been exposed to over the past 20 years since this happened. But the journey started. You start with your doctor. You know, you get the basic test done. Okay, there's nothing. We're going to send you on to a specialist. But in the meantime, you know, here are these 3 different medications that'll help you with the symptoms. All right. Right. So you start taking the medications. And this was almost like a merry-go-round, you know, for the next 18 months. I went from specialist to specialist to specialist, getting poked and prodded and drinking this yucky stuff and getting more and more tests done. But the result was always the same. There was no diagnosis. And in my mind, I grew up believing that there was pain. You saw your doctor and there was a diagnosis, and then you got medication to fix it, and then you went on with your life. But this wasn't happening this time around. And it got to the point where I was just finishing my business degree, looking to start my career, you know, newly engaged to my high school sweetheart. And I had always wanted 3 things in my life. I wanted to be a mom. I wanted to run my own business because I grew up in an entrepreneurial family. And even though it can be tough at times, I loved that environment. I wanted a family to grow up in that environment. And I wanted to marry Jason, who was my high school sweetheart. 3 things. I thought that's pretty simple. But as my pain started to progress and no one could find answers, I started to question all of that. Like, why would this man that I love, why would I trap him in a relationship where I could hardly, on the outside, that was the thing though. On the outside, I looked healthy, right? But on the inside, I was, you know, we talked about this earlier this week. I felt like I was a stranger. I didn't know the person inside. I started losing my voice, like literally losing my voice. I started getting anxious about doing things like making a hair appointment or going for a job interview, like things that normally would have been, I would have shown up in my power and got, you know, was ready to impact. And I was retreating and retreating and retreating. And that's when I started having those thoughts like, why would I gift this man that I love a lifetime of misery with a woman who, you know, could not travel with him and possibly have kids with him and contribute and have a career. And those thoughts were confirmed for me when I went to my last doctor's appointment, and she said to me, Jana, we believe as your medical team that the pain is in your head and that you're seeking attention and you should have a nice life. And it was devastating. I remember reading in a magazine once that if you're tearing up and you have makeup, if you just like look up toward your brow line, then you won't ruin your makeup. And so I remember looking up at my eyebrows and just thinking, like, dear God, like, why? Like, why did I pull? What did I do? Like, did I pull the short straw? And that's what I was thinking. Like, what have I done in these 23 years to get this, sentence? And I went into a state of depression for a couple of months. I did, and it was hard to get out of bed. And I thought, well, here it is. Here's the rest of my life. Until I was at the grocery store one day, and I looked over, they have the magazine racks on the side, like when you're checking out, and there was a fitness magazine, and Madonna was on the cover of that magazine. And I'm a big Madonna fan. Mm-hmm. And the word Pilates was splattered across the magazine cover. And I didn't even know how to say it. So I was like, what is pilots? So I bought the magazine. I bought the magazine, and I went home and I read it. And then I realized, how they put the phonetical, the way to pronounce it. So it was Pilates. But I was reading about this form of movement that was very focused on breath and on moving the spine. And it used words like organizing the body from the inside out, improving, the function of your organs, connecting the mind, body, and spirit, like all of these terms. And I was like, what? Because I had grown up playing all the sports, doing all the boot camps, running marathons, right? Where I believed that your body had to actually hurt the day after a workout, your physical body, right? And when your physical body was in pain, that meant give yourself a pat on the shoulder. Good job, Jana. That was an awesome workout. And if I could easily walk down the stairs the next morning and I couldn't feel the pain in my legs, I'd be like, oh, we got to amp it up next time we get to the gym, right? So all these belief systems and all this new information started to have this little tornado with each other. And I just thought, well, I don't have anything to lose. So I treated myself to a new Pilates mat. I bought a new pair of leggings and a new water bottle, and I registered for a Pilates mat class that I went to twice a week. That started the fall of 1999. And by Christmas, everyone, so 16 weeks later, I had weaned myself off of the 11 medications that I was at that point taking every single day. My body started to change. The Jana that I knew was in here started to show herself again, almost like, a butterfly coming out of a chrysalis. Like, I realized that once I shifted my mindset to ask, what is this meant to teach me? Why am I getting this pain gifted to me? Because actually through the whole ordeal, I actually at one point named my pain. I named my pain. I called it my edge. So when I would feel the pain coming on, I'd be like, oh, hello, edge. We're going down this road today together, aren't we? And when I personified it, then I felt like I had some sense of control over it. Mm-hmm. And by Christmas of 1999, I was a completely different person. And I just wanted to learn more about this form of movement that changed me from the inside out. Because in my first class, I should have mentioned, I could not even breathe. My instructor was teaching us how to breathe with a muscle called the diaphragm. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And there were all these people like of all ages, shapes, and sizes laying around me. And I walked in thinking, I'm going to be the best student here, right? Because I had my new mat and I looked really good in my leggings. And then I lay down and I was like, I cannot even, isn't breath something that we do? That's the first and the last act of life. And what happened for me, that I was being suffocated and I could not even get my air into my body. And so it was this amazingly beautiful experience of reconnecting with my body and my mind and understanding, when I positioned it as the universe, God, the creator, spirit was giving me this gift for a reason. I didn't know at that point that it would completely shift my career to where I am now. And I know now why I had my pain, because if I didn't go through it myself, the tens of thousands of people's lives that I've impacted through, the concepts that fixed me, I couldn't have authentically done that. So that's my journey.
From pain comes purpose. So many questions to ask. So first of all, going back to the horrendous gaslighting of your pain, to it's in your head, you're doing it for attention. I mean, how many people need to hear that? Just full stop. Whoever's listening, somebody who's listening to this needs to hear that. When you say you're in pain, and don't let anybody tell you you're not in pain. They're not in your body, they don't know. And there's many, many blessed experts on the planet, and we've got all kinds of experts for all kinds of people, for all kinds of pain. And when you don't get seen and heard where you stand, you get up and you move and you keep going until you find the person who sees you and understands, right? I love the synchronicity of the Madonna moment. You get given and shown what you need when you need it, if you keep your eyes open for it, and you let down your defenses to be open to things that are outside of your zone. And there's just so much goodness in it. And when you're saying about like when you shifted your mindset to what is the lesson, it reminded me of Dr. Kim Durramo, who I often have chats with and bring in, and she always says, like, what is right about this? Same thing, like, what is right about this? Because if we don't look at it like that, we're in a fight, a war with ourselves. So, and also validly, when someone says there's no hope for you and you go into a state of depression, of course you go into a state of depression. It's like people feeling that way. It's like if everyone has told you, whatever the story is, you can't heal, it's all in your head, you're not good enough, whatever it is, if you say that enough to a human being in a state where they're already in pain and despair, of course you're going to feel depressed and hopeless and all those things. So I think it's really important to say that those are natural feelings to go through, right? What do you think it is about, like Pilates as a modality has been a really big part of your life, but there are elements of that, and there are foundations to your teachings and how you've helped people heal, which we're going to go through shortly. What do you think it was about the vehicle of Pilates specifically? Because like there's elements of it that you could take out and it wouldn't be Pilates, but for some reason the combination, was it the Pilates or was it the elements of Pilates?
For me, and again, you framed that beautifully, Bernadette, because it really is the vehicle. For Pilates was my vehicle. For some people, it could be Tai Chi or Qigong or yoga, or just, have a solid meditation practice. But what I loved and what connected me to it is once I started understanding where the form of movement came from. So Joseph Pilates is the German man who created this form of movement. And as I actually started learning more about him, because I was so intrigued by the simplicity of the movement, there was this disconnect. Like my brain kept thinking, how does this simple breathing and moving your spine 5 different ways every day, how does that in itself optimize health? Don't you need puddles of sweat on the floor? Don't you need grunting and, towels to dab your head? So I mean, that's where my brain works. I was like, help me understand what's going on here. So as I learned about Joseph Pilates' story, he grew up in Germany in the late 1800s to a mom who was a naturopathic doctor and a dad who was a gymnast. So think about Germany, late 1800s. You may not think of it that kind of an upbringing. Joe was very ill as a child. He had asthma, rickets, and rheumatic fever. So he spent a lot of his childhood observing others. He especially loved watching animals move. He would just watch them, and he was just taken back by, a cat, as an example, who could be like eyes closed, completely calm, to being startled, leap into the air, and so gracefully, land and just respond. And he wondered why people's bodies were not like that. There was one of his quotes in a book he wrote said, that gentleman's nose gets to the street corner before his feet do, right? Like he was already talking about, posture that was compromised back then, never mind 120 plus years, into the future. I think he'd be turning over in his grave if he saw, the children that are hunched over devices all day long, right? And so that really intrigued me, because the roots of the form of movement came from such a simple place. The irony of Joe Pilates' story is that he was in Germany, and as a German in Germany during the war, he was interned at an internment camp on the Isle of Man. And that was when, in like, the Spanish influenza pandemic was like rampant worldwide. No one, every day he would take his detainees in his camp through almost like a Greco-Roman wrestling type calisthenic workout. That's where he created the Pilates mat work, in that experience. And the bedridden detainees, he would unhook, certain springs off the bed. He would weld these frames behind and would use pulleys and weights, and would attach these pulleys and weights to the bedridden detainees' arms and legs, and move them, creating blood flow. And nobody in Joe's camp died during, the pandemic that was over 100 years ago. The story goes that Adolf Hitler took note, or heard about, this young German man who was training superhumans through his special breathing and movement, experience. And he summoned Joe back to Germany, had a meeting. Hitler's values and Joe's values didn't line up with each other. Joe ended up in New York City, and that's where he brought Pilates to North America. But so besides the history, it's the pragmaticness of the movement. You learn how to move into and out of a range. So for example, what is life? Life is opening a door and closing a door. Life is picking up your toddler and putting your toddler back down. Life is, like we were talking before we came on, managing your dog, with the cats around, to make sure that you don't get injured in the moment of, there's a cat, I am going to go for that cat. Exactly. And I could very, clearly see the connection between what I was doing and how I would live it. And that's what I've been teaching, is live what you learn. Don't do a workout, leave that on the mat or leave that on the bike or wherever you are, and then resume the rest of your life. Our bodies are brilliant. We were born with everything we need to flourish in this lifetime. We were. And if you think of the word health, the first 4 letters of that word are heal, right? And if you just understand the basics of breath and proper hydration and proper oxygenation, and understand that our body is a series of systems versus pieces, that physicality of movement that I learned from Pilates and have now evolved over the past 15 years, it's a beautiful, simple way to view the body, which many of us have been taught to be very complex, or we need an expert's opinion on what's going on. And when that happens, we then surrender. We surrender to a system that, and I'm not saying, there are valid reasons, right? For the classic medical system from a diagnosing and treating perspective, yes. And I've seen miracles happen in that system. But for so many of us, when we surrender our back pain, our chronic headaches, our digestive pain, those kind of what I would call basic movement, experiences when it comes to health, we lose the ability to be inspired and awed by the amazingness of our body. We put that in someone else's hands, and then we step away, and then we leave it up to them to do the fixing. Whereas the fixing really should come from within, because magical things can happen when you understand the very simple concepts of what our body needs to flourish.
And no one can advocate for your health like you can, to the extent, no one is going to care about your health to the level that you're going to care about your health, in terms of leading your health team, right? And feeling like you have the right to lead your health team. And I think it's a scary, slippery slope to think you could, as you did, end up 18 plus months into excruciating pain, 11 medications laid on top of each other to be told there's no hope, and now you're depressed and you've got no options.
Yeah.
And, you know, there'll be a lot of people that are in positions like that. And I think the hope is, and the inspiration is that you found your way out. And while there's different healing modalities needed for each person, there's some foundations, and you referred to them before, which is what I want to go into now, is what are some of these things you mentioned, hydration and oxygenation and these things. So can we go through a little bit about that? Because we've talked about the brilliance of your body, and the when we chatted another time, you were talking about your big aha was, I can't leave this in the hands of health professionals. I have, like, there is something I have to do to participate in this in a different way in order to help myself. And what are these things?
Yeah, you know, absolutely. So there are some really basic things, and understanding. So when I had my pain, I thought that that was going to be my lesson. But then I was gifted, we have 3 boys. I was gifted our middle son's pain and helping him navigate that about 5 years ago. And then to top things off, I was also gifted my mom's nerve pain for about almost 2 years. And to hear your mom on the phone say to you, if I have to live another day on this earth in this body, I'm out, right? And so what these 3 experiences helped me to do was, you know, with my own pain, I found the formula or the strategies that worked for me. And then I was gifted the ability to test that out with my son. And then just to make sure I had it right, I was gifted my mother's pain as well. And so when I talk about these basic things, everyone, they really, you know, it doesn't matter if you are at that point, he was a 14-year-old boy. My mom was, you know, in her early 60s. It doesn't matter. These are things that our body needs. So first of all, let's talk about oxygenation. Okay. So breathing. We have 75 trillion cells in our body. Okay. 75 million cells that make us who we are, that make up our heart, our lungs, our muscles, our, like, all of who we are. So imagine, think about driving, when you're driving in your vehicle and your car is low on fuel, and you'll see a little yellow or orange light go on, and it'll attract your eye, and you'll be like, oh, the next gas station I go by, I should fill up my tank with gas. Imagine those 75 million cells like that. And imagine them all with this orange glow, all telling you they are low on not fuel, but on oxygen. How do you think your body is going to be during the day when those 75 million cells are asking you for help? You're going to have fatigue. You might have brain fog. You might even have like low-grade headache. Maybe you have like basic things, like maybe you're constipated and you're like, what is going on here? How can we possibly expect our systems to do their job when they are not optimal? You can't. So breathing diaphragmatically is like a little gold nugget of information, because here's how simple it is, everyone. When you breathe diaphragmatically, and I'll show you how to do it in a second, but when you breathe diaphragmatically, you're actually taking in 600% more oxygen. Okay. So did you know, like mid-morning, mid-afternoon, when you are yawning, okay, yawning is a physiological response to you being low in oxygen. Your brain is so smart that it can tell when you're low on oxygen, and you start to yawn, because here's what your brain is saying. If you're not going to breathe for me in a way that is going to optimize my cellular structure, I am going to make you breathe. So what is a yawn? You open your mouth up really wide and you take in these big gulps of oxygen. It's like taking your water bottle and guzzling water. That's what yawning is like for oxygenation. And so, you know, on those days where you feel like, oh, I've had such a good sleep, and then you're like 2.5 hours into your day and you can barely keep your eyes open, that's an oxygen issue. Okay. It's not necessarily a sleep issue, but it is an oxygen issue. So when you breathe diaphragmatically, now your diaphragm is a muscle. It looks like an open umbrella or like a mushroom cap. It's got a dome shape to it. And it lives, I'm just going to show you, it lives right here in the crest. So it just kind of follows the ribs in that dome shape. So if you were to put one hand here on this flat bone called your sternum and one hand on your belly button, here is how you can test whether your diaphragm is strong. Because you know what, everyone? It's a muscle. Just like your biceps are a muscle, this is a muscle. So guess what happens if you don't use it? It loses its functionality, right? So if you were to breathe in through your nose, like you're smelling, let's just say, you took chocolate chip cookies out of the oven and you wanted that amazing smell. So inhale through your nose. And on the exhale, you're going to part your jaw a little bit, and your exhale is going to be like this. Like an HA sound, okay? Like you're fogging up your bathroom mirror when you were a little kid and wanted to put your initials in it, okay? So let's try it again, but this time turn your focus to which hand moves more during your inhale, okay? We'll do this 3 times through, and then I'm gonna ask which hand was moving more, top or bottom. All right, here we go. Inhale. And exhale out of your mouth. Inhale. And exhale. And one more time, breathe in. And make that sound. Exhale. Okay. So Bernadette, which hand did you feel moving more?
For me, only because I've been doing diaphragmatic breathing for a long time, my belly hand. But right. Before that would have been my chest hand.
And that's exactly what it is. So most people, if this is new to you, I'm suspecting that the top hand would be moving more. I lovingly call you my little fish. And I call you my little fish because what you've actually trained your body to do. So the diaphragm is the primary breathing muscle, but then we have secondary breathing muscles. Just like there's the main actor in a film, and then there's, the supporting actors. So we have supporting actors in our body for breathing, and they're actually these muscles in our neck. They're called the scalenes and the sternocleidomastoids. If you know the story, like if you watch like superhero movies like Hulk, when Hulk turns green and gets mad, those big muscles in his neck pop. You've actually trained those muscles to be breathing muscles. So why I call you my little fish are because you're like using your gills, okay? But here's the problem with that. These muscles already have a pretty important job. Their job is to hold this bowling ball on top of our spine so we can experience our world. So now you're saying, hey, little muscles, and they're small, okay? Compared to the diaphragm, these are little. So now what you're saying is, hey, little neck muscles, I know you've got a big job, but you do so good at it. I'm going to make you do breathing for this body. And these muscles are like, okay, we'll do our best. And then what happens over time is if you're someone that has chronic neck tension, if you're someone who has like temporomandibular joint or TMJ issues, that very well could be the result of loading these little muscles with a job that is not even theirs to begin with. It's just the supporting role. So you go to your massage therapist, maybe you go for a chiro treatment and you're like, oh, this feels so good. And 3 days later, you're locked back down because you haven't changed the pattern. And you go and you breathe back into those muscles. So if you can 3 times a day, here's the recipe, 3 times a day, 10 to 12 times each. So I do mine in the morning, midday, and then when I'm back in bed at night, I just place my hands on my belly button and my sternum, close my eyes, I inhale through my nose and I exhale out of my mouth, and I focus on that bottom hand, creating more motion, because then I know with confidence that I have taken the work. I've asked these muscles that were volunteering, and I've distributed the work to where it should go. Here's the other beautiful thing about this. We have our nervous system has 2 parts, sympathetic and parasympathetic. We live in sympathetic way more than we should. Sympathetic is the fight, flight, or freeze mode. And so we breathe faster, we talk faster, we shovel our food, we do all these things that we're telling our body by the speed and the urgency that there's danger, right? And that's what we're telling our body all day long. When we breathe this way, we start to nurture the parasympathetic, which is the rest and digest. So even if you were to plan this breathing just before, like if you're saying like your little thankfulness for your food, if you could, get into the habit of doing your breathing before you pick up your fork or your spoon, you will set yourself up. Actually, your digestion will happen in a more calm way. The absorption of those nutrients is going to be optimized. You're going to taste your food differently. You're going to chew it more. And you'll see the first about week of this, I kid you not, everyone, when you breathe this way, you're going to feel a little bit lightheaded because the levels of oxygen you're taking in, your brain is like, whoa, wait, what's happening here? It's almost going to, feel like that second glass of wine. Like
I'm high on life. I'm high on the oxygen of life.
Exactly. And that's what it is. Right. But just know that after, a couple of weeks of this, your brain is going to be like, oh, wait, this isn't just a one-off. I actually get to do my job with all this great oxygen around me. And that's where I said, you'll notice brain fog will become less, like, where did I put my phone? Or did I send that email? Like those kinds of things will start to become a thing of the past. And your body will flirt. You'll give your metabolism a boost. Like there's all these systems are just raring to go. But when we're not nurturing them in this simple way, they're going to become less efficient. They're going to be lagging, and then they won't be optimally working in your favor.
And linking back to, I'm in physical pain. My body is made up of cells. My cells are low on the fuel of oxygen. The breathing gives the oxygen. The cells get what they need. The cells are producing the experience of life you're having inside your body. Breathing important. From a first-hand experience, to just be another example of what you've said, life-changing diaphragmatic breathing. Yeah, healing, fight-flight response, helping to heal adrenals, stress response, fear, anxiety, physical pain, completely and utterly life-changing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I still relate to what you're talking about. Like sometimes I'll be eating and I'll be like, I don't even think I'm tasting this food because I think I've been holding my breath. I think I've actually been eating and holding my breath for like 2 minutes. It's like, did they just, it's like, oh, hold on a minute. It's really have to, if you've had a busy day or something.
Yes,
you
absolutely.
really have to remember. And I think people think, well, it can't be that simple because we just breathe. And it's like, yeah, but there is breathing and there's breathing.
Absolutely.
I've heard people describe it as, I feel like I'm trapped inside my rib cage.
Yeah.
But I can't. Yeah. And then I think the challenge you get is that then if you start to do gasping, but you're still doing chest shallow breathing, then you just hyperventilating.
Yeah, you do. And when you think of it from like a chi and chakra perspective, like, the heart chakra and the throat chakra, it's like, this is our voice. This is how we discern what we, what are we taking a stand for? How are you showing up in this world? And so we could go so much deeper into like the philosophy of that as well. But that's why the physicality connects right in to like the spirituality of who we are. That life force inside of us needs, the physicality of it needs to be nurtured.
Love. So oxygenation was one.
Yes.
Second?
Yes. So let's talk about hydration. Okay. So hydration, key. And here's what I can tell you. Think of like a pyramid. Okay. Water is used in a priority way in the body. So at the top of the pyramid or the top of the triangle is your brain. Your brain is the first organ to be hydrated, all right? Second in that triangle, the next layer are your vital organs, all right? The last layer of that triangle are the tissues of your muscles, your bones, your joints, fascia, right? Those, a lot of the soft tissues that give us structure, give us posture, okay? So if you were to understand that, and you're someone that like, and I've heard it all, trust me. Like, I don't like the taste of water. Water makes me bloated. I have to pee all the time, right? Like you hear all these things. And here's what I can tell you about water. it seems counterintuitive, but the more water you drink, the less bloated you will be, because your tissues will be properly hydrated. They'll be gliding. They have, when we're properly hydrated, blood flow, which is our body's, transportation system to get nutrients, nutrient rich blood to different parts of our body. It's like efficient. It can get you what you need at any time. When you are dehydrated, that system is actually negatively impacted, and it takes longer to get the nutrients where they need to be. So if you think about that bottom layer of the triangle, where hydration impacts your muscles, your bones, your joints, those kinds of tissues, if you're someone who is like sciatic nerve flare up, plantar fasciitis, bursitis, tendonitis, all those itises, I promise you, there is no amount of over-the-counter medication, anti-inflammatory, that is going to fix that. It'll help with the symptoms for sure. Absolutely. But what about the root cause?
Root cause resolution, yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
What about that? And so if you understand how important hydrated tissue is, you'll start sipping your water. And maybe if you're not a water drinker, just start with a glass. For me, I start my hydration first thing in the morning, because if you don't wake up that thirst mechanism and the first sip doesn't come till just before noon, that you're already in a state of dehydration.
Yeah.
So the sooner you can wake up the thirst mechanism, the sooner your brain's going to be like, hey, Jana, I'm ready, right? So, and yes, there's a bladder component to it. You do have to kind of work up to a certain level. People diffuse fruit. They put essential oils. You can get those fancy machines that carbonate your water if you need to. Just find a strategy that works, because I'll tell you something. From an anti-aging perspective, hydration is like a game changer. Did you know that cellulite is fascial tissue? And we'll talk about fascia in a second, but fascial tissue that is puckered or stuck to the outermost layer of our skin. So we get this cottage cheese type looking skin because of that fascia. Now, fascia is like a boa constrictor snake that wraps around every single muscle fiber we have. It restricts blood flow to the muscle, and blood flow is the food, basically. So think of, if you didn't water, if you have a plant, if I didn't water, we call this our love tree. We bought this when we got engaged like 26 years ago. If we didn't water our love tree, do you think it would be as, amazing as it is right now? No. So if we're not giving our body the water it needs, it cannot flourish. It cannot. And then what happens is this fascial tissue sticks at a force of about 2,000 pounds per square inch. It locks us down almost like a DNA helix. It rotates down and in. Our posture gets impacted. Our blood flow gets impacted. Then all of a sudden our organs aren't working as optimally as they should. We do look older, faster. All of these things play into the hydration and this fascial tissue that can restore your energy and vitality.
Wow. So then linking back, pain, cells need oxygen and water to function. So if we're wanting to go having a recipe to make a cake, if you want your cake to come out, you do X, Y, Z things, you mix them together. You can't mix together the bits of the body, leave out proper hydration, and expect the body to heal itself, to restore to equilibrium, is what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah.
Interesting timing meeting you. I love synchronicity of life because recently, like maybe 2 or 3 weeks before I first connected with you, I don't know what put me onto it, but I was like, I'm dehydrated, and I think I've been dehydrated for 43 years. So I'm now on the bandwagon. Like I know that I need to drink water, and I usually drink water, but I think I'm drinking like a quarter of what I need to. So now I'm drinking the proper amount, like you said, in the morning. And there's something about being hydrated from, just going on a tangent here, spiritual point of view, about being connected and the energy that runs through our body and the conductivity of, there's something about that. I don't know what it is, but I'm getting a lot of messages about being hydrated and being able to be properly connected to intuition and spiritually speaking, as well as the physical. But my take on the whole I pee too much thing, you know, you were saying people are like, oh, but I pee too much. I'm like, I'd rather look younger and like not have pain and pee a lot than not. But I think it is about what makes it easy. So for me, I do carbonated water. For some reason, I just love it, and lemon water.
And that's great, right? If that's what works for you, that's, you know, and that's, it is when you understand why, like, that's what I love doing for people, is connecting the dots between. So it's one thing to say, Bernadette, you're dehydrated, drink more water. Okay, well, that's going to last for probably 2 days, right? And then we fall back into that reptilian brain, just survive, right? We want to do more than that. We want to thrive. So if I can help you understand that when you drink water, right, that you are, you know, what's happening to the cells, how the tissues are gliding, how those nutrients are being delivered. For some people it is, you know, the looking younger. You do. I mean, I love that you brought up that, you know, the spirituality of taking in water, because I feel more connected and grounded. Like when I am properly hydrated, I just feel like I'm in my energy, in my frequency. And when I'm not, I can feel it and I can see it. So it's, and you know what, as we've been talking about this, it's minutes a day. Like, these are not expensive strategies, and they take minutes a day. So if you can find ways, like I said, you know, parallel them to a meal or to something that you do consistently throughout your day. If you're, you know, you can start and end your meditations with some water, and just feel it, like feel the water as you drink it, feel it hit the back of your throat, the coolness, make it a kinesthetic experience, because it will give you new perspectives on, you know, what it's actually doing in your body.
Oh my God, I'm loving all of this. This is so good. And, you know, I think the hydration thing, I interviewed Dr. Uman, and I do recently, and I don't know if it was in a conversation with her, we were talking about nutrition links to anxiety and nutritional links to, you know, different mental health conditions. And I've had anxiety for a long time. And I'm pretty sure it was her that said something, or someone else said something to me about hydration and anxiety. You're dehydrated, it affects your mental and emotional state. And I was just like, that was as obvious as it is. It was a real aha moment of, this simple act is literally going to change my life, about my level of connectivity and groundedness and intuition and mental health. And this is so easy. Can it be this easy? Yes, it can be this easy. And I think one of the interesting things is, my dad walks around all the time. He won't watch this probably, but if he will, he had that little smile. And he's like, I don't get thirsty. I don't get thirsty. And he's like 80, he's 83, and he's like super awesome, like super strong and super amazing, never gets sick. But he's just like, I don't get thirsty. I don't get thirsty. He never drinks. And I sort of made up in my mind that I must have the same thing. And so just kind of as a young person, just wrote it off. But the reality is I started getting really attuned to this when someone mentioned hydration recently, and then I met you. As I was walking around, I was like, you know what? I'm actually pretty often throughout the day literally thirsty. And I learned this from someone, is that by the time you physically in your throat feel like super like dehydrated and thirsty, you're at the very end of that. You're like so far down the dehydration.
True. Yeah, it's true. And you know what, it's funny, because so many people equate thirst with, you know, that point where if you've been running, where you're like, oh my gosh, I can't take another breath, I have to take some water in. And that's the furthest. And what does thirsty even mean? And if you've been so disconnected from that communication with your body, where you feel thirsty, like you said, as soon as you're 2%, your hydration, let's say 100% is hydrated, 98% is considered dehydrated. So it doesn't take much. And that's, you know, that's one of the things I learned with elite athletes, is it's just a delta of 2%. And you might think, if you're writing an exam, you'd be like, no, I'd be happy with 98% on that exam. But from a hydration perspective, you're already, you know, tickling that dehydration state at only being 2% off of fully hydrated.
Wow. Okay. So we've got some fantastic practical takeaways for the breathing, oxygenation, and hydration. Any other tips?
So I just want to touch really quickly on the movement part. So our spine is made up of tiny little bones called vertebrae. In our body, bones that are long, like our arm bones, our leg bones, long bones are stability bones. They hold us up, they give us structure. Small bones, like in our hands and our feet and our spine, are meant for mobility, for movement. All right. Our spine is like a stretched out letter S. It is meant to have curves to it because when we slip and fall or get into a motor vehicle accident, or, like I said earlier, your dog pulls you, if your spine was a rod, all of those moments, that rod could have been broken, right? So it's meant to be pliable and movable. In between each of those little bones is like a little jelly donut called your intervertebral disc. And then your nerve structures are plugged in all the way up your spine like lights on a Christmas tree. When your spine is not optimally functioning, so maybe it's, we've all heard sitting is the new smoking, right? This forward rounded posture. We think of, Quasimodo from the Hunchback of Notre Dame, right? Like we see all of this. There was a meme going around Instagram where it was like, it starts with an ape, and then you can see it going to a two-legged man. And then you see the integration of technology, and the person at their computer is basically the same shape as that ape was, exactly, right? So here's the recipe for movement. Our spine needs to move 5 ways every single day. It needs to rotate. It needs to bend to the side. Okay. It needs to extend. So if you were looking at clouds in the sky or taking the last sip of wine from your wine glass, that's extension. Now, flexion is a rounded shape, but not rounded from like passively rounded. The rounding I'm talking about is if you're sitting watching this, if you feel those bony butt bones in and around your, in your butt, if you take those bony butt bones and roll them forward toward your computer screen, and you no longer feel them underneath you, and then go back, that's flexion. That's pelvic flexion. And that's what I'm talking about. It stretches the muscles of the low back. It gets those vertebrae in the low back to actually move in a really optimal way. That's flexion, not hunching the shoulders forward, right? The last spinal movement is if you were laying on your floor with your knees bent and you lifted your butt off the air, or lifted your hips in the air into like a bridge shape. Okay, so you're just on the floor, on your back, feet on the ground, knees bent, and you just lift your butt off. As soon as your tailbone gets higher than your heart in a nice incline or decline, I guess, from the tailbone, gravity gets to work in a different way on the spinal fluid. So we're on a planet with gravity. We have force coming this way. The spinal fluid is getting pushed down. And that's why actually at the end of our day, we are shorter than we are when we wake up in the morning, because gravity has that much impact. And those of you who drive to and from work every day, have you ever gotten into your vehicle at the end of your day and you're like, why is my rear view mirror, right? Like looking, basically would be looking at the ceiling. And so then you fix it and you get in the morning, you're like, why is my rear view mirror looking at my back seat? And you fix it. It's because you literally are it's not like inches different, but enough that rear view mirror is not looking to where you need it to look. So when we can create this opportunity for our tailbone to be higher than our heart, and then gravity works a little bit differently on that spinal fluid, it does fill those jelly donuts. It like plumps them back up like sponges full of water. And that's what gives us vitality from a spinal perspective. And then all those nerves that are getting plugged in, and those nerves, those are the communication lines between the brain and all of our bodily functions, and giving someone a hug and waving goodbye and making a shoulder check, like all of those things just get more refined. And so that's why when I work, the people I work with are like, my gosh, I feel like 5 years younger than I did. Why is this happening? It's because what I've learned is that when you see your body as arm day, leg day, cardio day, it actually separates us into these pieces, but we're actually a whole structure with muscles and arms and a beating heart and a soul and a brain. And when we can have this human experience, right? We all know that we're spiritual beings having a human experience. When we can optimize the human experience, guess what, you guys? It's going to tap into that spiritual experience. It can't not.
Yeah.
And then you show up as these beams of light to your families, your communities, and you just impact in such a sparkly way. And it feels good. It feels good to show up that day or that way. And you know what? Because life is not this linear, today was better than yesterday and next month's better than this month. It's not linear. When we do get those curveballs thrown at us, we are able to respond in a way that is just, you can kind of surrender in a different way. You can go with the flow in a different way. Do you have Eeyores in your life? I have Eeyores from the Winnie the Pooh story. Eeyore is always like, oh, like, there's always, but what about, have you thought about this, right? Guess what? The Eeyores in your life are going to start to get a little Tigger spring in their step because you gift that to them. So that's my trifecta, right? The physicality of the trifecta that plugs into the emotional being, the spiritual being, and creates this whole body experience.
So with the 5 things of the spine, first of all, I'm going to add bridge every morning because I do the other 4, but I don't do the other one from time to time. So I'm going to add that in, loving that. And of course, from a pain perspective and a healing perspective, the information flow through your spine to everything in your body, information not getting through, healing not happening, right? So linking that to the pain. But yes, I so love the physical, we talked about it and I wrote it down as soon as you said it. Physical vitality brings spiritual vitality. Because of course, this is the vehicle that our spirit is poured into. So it's like soul is here going, I'm here for the ride called life. And then the body's like, I'm so not here for this, right? Yeah. And it can't shine out of you when it doesn't have core foundations. And I think on the spiritual journey, I think, I've gone so far down the psychological rabbit hole, the spiritual rabbit hole, the physical, I'm obsessed with exercise and all the different things. But the reality struck me a few years ago is that you just cannot live a fully vibrant spiritual life unless you really honor your body, because your body is the vehicle that carries your spirit. And so it doesn't mean you have to have anything about having perfect health or a perfect body, but there are just some core foundations, and the ones you've shared are just like some basic nutrition, oxygenation, hydrate, move your body, functional movement, right? Things that allow you to function day to day. I just really love your work, and essentially that's what you did in those 4 months to create healing in your body, to get off and out of that situation that people told you was your life sentence, basically.
Mm-hmm. And that, what, I didn't even realize it was a download at that time, and I kept asking, like, is it really this easy? Like, it feels like, am I missing something? Is there, and no, like, it really is that easy. And so helping people we need a paradigm shift. We need a new operating system to think about this body. We've got to stop flipping through our Instagram feed and looking at, the 21-day cleanse and, the quick fixes, because there is no longevity to that. There is maybe some quick wins, but what happens when those wins start to, wind down? We are such, and I think as women, a lot of us can be very hard on ourselves. We can expect a certain look or a certain number or a certain size. And my message has always been that, we want to redefine what is strong. What is strong is, pulling your kids through 2 feet of freshly fallen snow on a sleigh and seeing their rosy cheeks, right? Strong is being able to help your elderly neighbor, move something that they need, like to be able to show up in this world and be like, oh, should I do that? Like, is this going to mess my back up? Or is this, that is not necessarily showing up in our most optimal, true way. And that's what strength is about. It's having this toolbox of amazing, well, I'll say it this way. A couple of days ago, mid-afternoon, I was working away and I just got like right here, my third eye, I got this headache. And then it felt like I was getting a sinus headache. Like my head just got really achy and pressury. And I was like, so I closed my computer, and the thought of going to get like an over-the-counter pain med didn't even enter my mind. I warmed up a little bit of water, put some lemon in it. I actually used I have a stainless steel water bottle. I grabbed it because it was cool, and I started like rolling it, because this is amazing for the fascia. I started rolling my whole head out with my water bottle. I lay down, did some breathing, moved my spine. And, it wasn't like in 5 minutes, but an hour after, I was ready to go. And so when you really embody this work, the body is so amazing at communicating. We just don't always know what those messages mean. But when you can slow down and implement the basic, pillars, you're going to become a connoisseur of movement, of hydration, of oxygenation, and you and your body will be like body besties, because you're going to hear it when it's a whisper versus waiting until it's full out temper tantrum. And that's the beautiful part of this, is that you become encouraged to take inspired action because your body is going to respond in a beautiful way.
What I also love about these things is that they're all your birthright and they're free.
Yeah.
So water, the air you breathe, and your ability to move your body.
Yeah.
And no matter how deep and difficult and layered someone's pain is, those things can be added in if they're not already in there in your overall health journey. So there's no suggestion that you don't do the things that work for you, that you don't follow the path that you're on, but the integration of these absolutely life-giving, vital, foundational things cannot have anything but a positive, beneficial contribution to the healing journey, whatever it might be, right?
Yeah. Well, it's not a coincidence. Like our body is 60% water. Do you think that's like nothing is a coincidence?
Right.
If we're 60% water, we need like that, just using that as one example. I'm such a firm believer in there are no coincidences. Everything that makes us who we are is there for a very specific reason. And as soon as you can understand the simplicity of that reason, like the world is your oyster.
Love it. So how can people learn more from you? You've got a great, I've actually signed up to it, by the way. I'm doing your video series at the moment. So you've got a mini masterclass, because I was really inspired after talking to you the other day. So I'm going to put a link with this video that people can use. And I love the name of it. It's Turning Pain from Limitation into Inspiration. So that's a 4-part mini masterclass, and it's very practical. So I'll put a link, people can go through and sign up to that. So if you're experiencing pain of any kind, or these it's really simple tools, and Jana's approach resonates with you, go and join up, and you send out those emails every couple of days so you can kind of watch and integrate in your own time. And it's very short and easy to apply. I think what I love about the whole conversation with you is you use really great analogies, like lit up like the nerves, the Christmas tree, the car, the fuel tank. I think we're a little similar like that, but it's really because it makes it really easy to understand. So don't get lost in all the, you lost me at some scientific description, I'm sorry.
Absolutely. Yeah.
I either zoned out and started snoring or I just glazed over and was like, what did she say?
Yeah, exactly. And because if you can't, I just think of it like bite-sized little pieces. If you can't chew it in one bite, many people don't want the full meal deal at the beginning.
Lost. Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
So I highly recommend people come through and check that out with you. And I hope that we're going to do some other things together in future anyway, because it's just been super fun. I'm really grateful for your time and sharing. This has personally been, I don't know about anyone out there, personally been fascinating for me. I've really enjoyed it, and I've actually learned a lot. So
amazing. Well, thank you. Thank you for introducing me to your community and giving me this platform. I really appreciate it.
You're very welcome. I'll make sure there's links with your website and social media and other things below as well, so people can stay in touch.
Amazing. Thank you.